Hey folks, welcome back to another video. You join me wandering up to the crag. Nice afternoon. It's a bit disgusting this morning here in North Wales, like chucking it down with rain. Now it's brightened up nicely, birds are tweeting away, sun's out, dog is trotting along up there like he does. He knows where he's going, been here 100 times, probably more. Today's video, a bit of a ranty one. I like a good rant, it's not too ranty, kind of messing. That DMM video back in about 2008, DMM filmed a really useful video, loads of good details, lots of testing of a certain thing. When back in 2008, of course there was testing, but it wasn't like channels like How Not to Highline and stuff like that doing tons of testing. So it was not unique as such, but less common than it is now to see these kind of videos with interesting testing. But as good as it was, and it was really good, super informative, I also think it's led to one of the biggest misunderstandings in the climbing world, like in the geeky side of things, ever. And it still kind of gets misquoted to this day, even though it's like we're 16 years later. So you'll join me, I'll get to a spot with a nice view and stuff, sit down, share a few things, talk about a few things and explain what I'm on about. Right, brace yourself folks, like I said, it's going to be a ranty one. Maybe not too ranty, but certainly chatty, but the boy will be here for a bit at least before he wanders off somewhere, and some nice views and a bit of sunshine to look at. That DMM video, to get it out of the way first off, that DMM video was really good. It was super interesting, and as I alluded to when I was walking up talking to the camera, there just weren't many videos like that at the time. So whereas, you know, people were into climbing and stuff, like I obviously was, and I was already doing instructor type stuff, we were kind of aware of the principles of what the video goes on to show. Most of us hadn't like seen those kind of videos that highlighted it really well, especially from like DMM, who are literally just over there. So it was nice to see it at the time, and for some people who didn't understand that stuff at all before, it was a bit of an eye-opener. But it did lead to some misunderstanding that still goes on to this day and gets misquoted and stuff, right? The test involved dropping an 80 kilogram mass of metal on a drop tower. When we fall off as a climber, not all the time, but often we might be hitting things, sliding down things, grabbing things, plus our body, you know, it's not metal, is it? It moves and gives a little bit. So dropping an 80 kilogram mass straight down, it's not impossible, but it is like worst case scenario. To put some figures, and I won't be super figure heavy on this video, but to give you some context, the military have done some testing to do with paratroopers into how many kilonewtons the human body can take. And the quote that I've read from that is that the human body is incompatible with 15 kilonewtons, by which that means, you know, a terminal sort of result. We can be damaged by less than that for sure, internal organs, etc., etc. So falling, we all do it climbing, most of us do it anyway, and we're all aware it can happen, and sometimes it's perfectly safe. But this video highlights one situation where it really isn't. The video tests an 11mm Dyneema sling and a 16mm nylon sling. Dyneema, which is normally white, you can't colour it, so when you see these slings, you'll have like yellow, in this case gold, extra. That is nylon, but it's like a really small amount. Whilst there is a tiny amount of stretch in Dyneema, it's like minimal, so to all intents and purposes as a climber, we're treating it as a static item. We like it because it's light and it's abrasion resistant, but that lack of stretch is a potential downside. Nylon, on the other hand, it's heavier for the same strength, a little bit bulkier, but you do get some stretch, so that might be forgiving in some circumstances, right? Now, I'm going to put up a short bit of that video where the person comparing the video, talking on it, Graham Desroy, who used to live in my house before I bought it, talks through the point of it. So I'll put that up now.
Now, the relevance of this in a climbing situation is that at a belay, people do quickly think, oh, I'll just attach myself, make myself safe, I'll just clip myself with a sling to the anchor point. And often there'll be a bit of slack in it. Now, is that important? And that's what we hope to find out today. In other words, if I fell off backwards with this amount of slack, is it going to generate much force?
Okay, so as you've just seen, the point of that video is to test out what happens when someone has perhaps used a sling to clip directly into an anchor, be that a bolt or another like static setup like a Dyneema sling, that kind of stuff, okay? So there's no rope involved, and this is crucial to this conversation. There is zero rope involved. It's a static affair, okay? Really key, that bit. That's what they're testing. They're not testing falling off on the rope. They're not testing a second falling off on a rope. They're testing clipping directly into something. Now we'll talk about, or in the video talks about, and I will talk about, full factor 1 and full factor 2 tests. That's what they did. Full factor 1, if this is the climber here, they've attached to say a bolt here. They've attached with this 60 centimetre sling. If they fall off from here level with it, how far do they fall? They fall 60 centimetres. 60 centimetre fall divided by 60 centimetres of material, 1, full factor 1. If they did something really bad and they went all the way up, how far would they fall? 60 plus another 60. 120 centimetres divided by the 60 centimetre of material out, 2, full factor 2. Full factor 2, very bad. Very bad no matter what you're attached with, really. It's going to be bad news. The tests showed, though, that it's really bad news on Dyneema, right? Like I said, I'm not going to be figure heavy because you can watch the video. I'll link it below. Any material, slings in this case, gets weaker the more times it is loaded. So they did like 3 tests on these, as in the same test 3 times. And actually, a Dyneema sling here, no knots at all. So just an open sling like this one is when it's unravelled. Falling onto that, on the 3rd fall of a full factor 1, broke it. Let that sink in for a second. If you're attached with a sling, and maybe you've undone the rope and stuff because you're going to abseil and you've climbed above it to sort something out, or level with it, in this case full factor 1, isn't it? Level with it, and you fall off, you could break that sling. If you do the same thing, but put a knot in it, you're almost certainly breaking that sling. If you take a full factor 2, you've climbed above it with a knot, you are like guaranteed to break that Dyneema sling. It is quite scary, that, isn't it? Right? I haven't got any nylon slings to show you, but you'll get the idea, and I say watch that video. If you fall off on a nylon sling, the chances are full factor 1 and even full factor 2, you will probably be alright because they stretch. They did snap those slings at times though, in that, so like I say, watch that video. With a knot in that nylon sling, taking a full factor 2, it did break. So do we want to be taking full factor 2s onto slings, regardless of them being Dyneema or nylon? No, we do not. A lot of us will carry these things these days. This is the Rock Empire PIP. You know, you might recognise the Petzl Connect more, you might see that a lot, the Petzl Connect Adjust. Stretches a bit, it's the same material as rope. Like I say, it's not going to stretch a lot, is it? Because there's not a lot of rope out. Do I want to be taking a full factor 2 onto that? I do not. Even if that doesn't snap, the chances of my body snapping, yeah, broken back and stuff, it's a real potential. Honestly, it is. It's a potential, and it's a scary thought, but that's what it is. So what the take home for me is, if you're going to attach with a sling at any point, for whatever reason, be tight on it all the time. Stay tight on it. So why aren't sling belays breaking all the time? Because we all use slings and tie knots in them on belays. I say all of us, maybe there's 0.1% that don't, and it seems there are, because whenever I put stuff on Instagram or Facebook or on YouTube, people say, you should never put knots in slings, especially Dyneema. How do you not know this? Everyone's going to die if you start sharing this thing. It's just not true though. And why is it not true? Well, the thing is, right, a belay setup will not break used properly. And that's the key, right? So if I build a sling belay, the master point or a quad or whatever, and put some knots in Dyneema, if I'm using Dyneema, and my second falls off, and I'm direct belaying onto that sling, so no shock absorption from me as the belayer, all the weight is going to go onto that setup, right? But what's between the setup and that climber? Rope, a load of stretchy rope. So even if you fall off at the worst possible time, which is probably actually at the belay, so let's say you've gotten to the belay as the second, climbed up, you get like level with it, and I wasn't paying attention as the belayer and I've let a load of slack go into it. If you fall off there, you could kind of take that fall factor one sort of fall. Ryan from How Not to Highline, which is another great channel, check it out, I'm sure you've seen it already, but there's so much quality stuff on there. He actually took one for the metaphorical team there, and he's done a video where he jumps off at various points. And the biggest shock he could create force-wise was 4.5 kilonewtons. So even if that Dyneema sling is snapping at a little bit over 10 kilonewtons, which it does in some of those tests with a knot in, full factor 2, that kind of thing, 10 kilonewtons, does that matter? Well, no. Because you cannot create 10 kilonewtons falling off as a second, right? It's just not possible. How are you going to create 10 kilonewtons falling off as a leader? Because it's the similar thing. Fall factors are the same. It's just different points that you're getting caught on, runners and stuff like that. But you still can't create that kind of force. To create those forces, we've messed up far more than putting a knot in a sling. Weird things have happened, right? If we were worried about breaking slings and stuff, well then we could never use, where's it gone? I've lost my, there it is. I could never use quick draws. They might be nylon, they might be Dyneema, depending upon the brand that you've got. But if I'm worried about snapping these things in a fall, well then I can't go climbing. But they don't break, do they? As long as they're in good condition and all that kind of thing, of course. But they don't break. Why? Well, we know why. There's a load of stretchy rope involved. The whole point of this video from DMM was to show that directly clipping into stuff with a sling and not staying tight on it is a bad idea. It was not to show you that knots in Dyneema are inherently bad. We don't break Dyneema by putting knots in it. We break Dyneema potentially. Hopefully I never will, and hopefully you never will. But the only way we could break it is by misusing it. That is the key, right? So if someone tells you, when they come to your belay, oh, you've put a knot in Dyneema, what a crazy thing to do, how dangerous. No, it's not. There's extra things that trump it. We're going to accept that perhaps those knots weaken slings. Depends on the setup as to how much. If you do a quad setup on a 8mm Dyneema sling, it breaks 39 kilonewtons. We're goners by then, so that's an irrelevant amount. But we put knots in slings to achieve other things like redundancy and independence, stuff like that. So I won't put a knot in a sling unless there's a reason to. And if I've put a knot in a sling, then I've got to use it in the correct way, a belay. Or if it is my extended abseil setup, staying tight on it. It's really simple. That DMM video just does not show that knots in slings are inherently bad. They're only bad if we misuse them. As a slight aside, okay, if we're worried about creating a force of 10 kilonewtons, well, which size nut can we go down to then? 12 kilonewtons? So we're going to decide that that's okay to fall off onto. If we go down all the way to number 3, that's when it gets less. 11 kilonewtons on a number 3, 9 I think on this one, yeah, 9 kilonewtons on a number 2. The smallest one on the regular set of nuts, 7 kilonewtons. More likely the rock that fails when we fall on that. So why aren't they breaking? We know why they're not breaking, because there's rope involved in the system. Nice stretchy rope. If you've watched a video like Dave McLeod climbing Rhapsody E11, old video now, but it's great. He breaks a nut on that. I think it's a micro. But even that shouldn't be breaking. The reason that broke, repeated falls onto it. It's got damaged that tiny bit until it's just got too much and it's snapped. In normal circumstances, we're not going to break even the small ones of those. The key for all of climbing is understanding why we're doing what we're doing. And there's a lot to learn, isn't there, right? There's just so much to learn, and it's never ending because people invent new setups and new bits of kit and all these kind of things. And the reason I did this video, as I said a minute ago, is because when I do put stuff on Instagram and Facebook, there is still, like 16 years later after that video, people referring to that video but having misunderstood it. There's a second one with Ben Bransby, and it goes into like clipping to belays and stuff like that, but it's still not involving a rope, so it's still worst case scenario. I hope that's provoked some thought. You know, that's half the point with these videos. Chuck the comments down below, you know what to do, any questions and stuff like that. If you've enjoyed the video and it's provoked some thought, click the like button, smash the subscribe button fast on Instagram, give us a follow there, use the buy me a coffee link to support me, and the boys asleep over there now in the sun. I do love it when it's warm, I'm too hot in this now. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. It's made me think a bit about stuff and how I explain things as well, because actually one of the things I love doing about these videos is it provokes thought for me as well. So, you know, thank you guys for making me do them. As always though, massive thanks for watching. More videos coming up very soon.